In the late 90s and early 2000s, the dot-com bubble was in full flow, and companies were bending over backwards to sell you computers, not only for the purposes of multimedia, but to get you on the information superhighway. The trouble was, despite how fast-paced technology was proceeding, some computers were still expensive if all you wanted to do was more simpler internet-related tasks. That's where internet appliances came in. They promised an affordable way for ordinary people to access email and the web without the complexity of a full PC or Mac. They did briefly enjoy a burst of interest before the days of broadband and the proliferation of cheap computer hardware. Today they're obsolete and have mainly been replaced with tablets and smartphones. As the internet was becoming mainstream, many companies believed most households didn't actually need a full computer. They were intimidating, got viruses, were complicated to install and crashed frequently. Some companies believed that there was a market for a $300 internet machine, and even some industry analysts predicted that internet appliances would outsell PCs. Several big manufacturers jumped on board and created devices in all shapes and sizes, from the 3-com Audrey to the compact iPac internet appliance to the ill-fated Sony e-Villa that I'd heard about from a UK publication PC Plus, as it used to cover alternative operating systems including BOS, which I had and still do have a fascination with B's desktop operating system. In early 2000, B had accepted that BOS was unlikely to gain a significant market share as a desktop operating system, so shifted focus to BIA, a lightweight version of the BOS designed for internet appliances. But unfortunately, the market failed to take off as expected, and B was acquired by Palm in 2001, bringing both BOS and BIA's development to a close. So what caused the downfall of internet appliances? Well, in the mid-90s, a family PC often cost somewhere between £1,500 and £2,000, perhaps more depending on the configuration and peripherals. But by the 2000s, the economics had changed dramatically, and there was fierce competition between big manufacturers like Dell, Compaq and Packard Bell. And because of this, it meant you could pick up an entry-level PC for around £500 to £700. These machines were powerful enough to browse the internet, send email, and do things other internet appliances weren't designed for, such as writing documents, doing spreadsheets, or even playing games. This made internet appliances much harder to sell. Saving a couple of £100 no longer seemed worthwhile when a full PC could do everything an internet appliance could do and so much more. And because of this, they faded into relative obscurity. A few companies over the years tried unsuccessfully to bring them back, with the most notable being Nokia, with their range of internet tablets. These didn't sell well, despite Nokia at the time being the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer, capturing about 33% of the market at that point, a massive lead over the likes of Motorola and Samsung. The issue with internet tablets was they required Wi-Fi, whereas at the time, Nokia sold some really good smartphones that had built-in 3G, allowing access to internet services on the move, whereas with the tablet you were tied to a Wi-Fi connection. Then in 2007 everything changed with the release of the iPhone. Suddenly you had an internet communications device in your pocket that had a nice large touchscreen, could access full desktop websites, could do email as well as play back music and video. This sealed the fate of internet tablets. So imagine my surprise when in 2009 the mobile phone company here in the UK launched the O2 Joggler. This internet appliance was designed to act as a digital hub for your home, and it was based on the OpenPeak OpenFrame 7 platform and featured a 7-inch touchscreen, Wi-Fi connectivity and a custom Linux-based operating system, which allowed users to browse the web, check emails and view photos, manage calendars and access a limited range of online services. O2 marketed the Joggler as a family information centre for the kitchen or living room rather than a replacement for a PC, but it was short-lived. When it initially launched it cost £149.99, but just over 6 months later the price was cut to $99.99. In 2010 the Joggler App Shop was announced, and the price was further reduced to a promotional $49.99. And whilst this price cut was supposed to be temporary, the demand was so high that O2 continued selling the remaining of the stock for $49.99 until it was eventually discontinued. At that price, buyers discovered they were getting an Intel-powered touchscreen for little more than the cost of a digital photo frame, and some clever folks soon figured out how to get alternative operating systems up and running. And that's where I got interested in it. A tiny computer for cheap? Yes please. Now I've already documented my disastrous first attempt at Linux and how it almost put me off for life. But over the years I have returned to dabble once in a while, and I figured I'd give it another go. An image had been created of Ubuntu Linux, which needed to be written to a USB memory stick. There's no hacking required, just put the memory stick into the USB port and turn it on. The device will automatically boot from this rather than the internal memory, and after a minute or two you're presented with the Linux desktop. Now I was a bit of a resolution snob back then, and I thought I couldn't possibly use anything lower than 1024x768, and the 800x480 display felt terribly cramped. Browsing the web was a test of my infamous lack of patience, as it required a lot of horizontal and vertical scrolling, but it was cheap. What I soon discovered was it was also not very fast. Intel Atom CPUs were a great idea in principle, a low-powered x86 CPU that was designed for netbooks, nettops and embedded devices, but designed to provide full PC compatibility whilst using very low power. Atom processors didn't need a fan and could be passively cooled, ideal for when you have a device sitting in a room where you don't really want to hear the whir of a fan. The Joggler's Intel Atom runs at 1.3 GHz, but if you've used an Atom before, you'll know that it offers barely adequate performance. The other issue with the Joggler is the lack of RAM. It shipped with 512 MB, so no sooner had you loaded the desktop, a browser and perhaps another couple of apps, you'd soon be running low of memory, and as you booted from USB, running a swap file would seriously hamper performance. As I already had a menagerie of computers, I didn't really need the Joggler. It was more of an impulse purchase, and I didn't really use it very much. I don't even think I kept it for that long thinking about it, and it probably ended up on eBay a few months later. So why in 2026 did I buy another one? Because, dear viewer, it was 15 whole British pounds, and that included the box, manuals, power supply and even the cost of shipping. So because of that, how could I not? I sometimes think I shouldn't be allowed to have adult money. I wanted to try Linux again on it, now that I'm older and wiser, or so I thought. Getting the image wasn't too difficult, and I wrote it to a USB memory stick using Berliner Etcher. Once written, I plugged it into the Joggler and powered it on. Initially, I didn't think it had worked because it showed the O2 boot logo, so I thought it was trying to boot off the internal storage, but I should have had more patience because a few seconds later, you get the grub menu, and then a few seconds more, it starts booting Ubuntu. Then, after a couple of minutes, you're at the desktop, so you can have a poke around. Now, I'm not going to give you a full walk around the operating system, as you've no doubt seen a Linux distribution or two in your time. No, what I want to do is play some games, play some video, and even try some emulation. So what game should we try first? What game indeed? Well, of course it has to be Doom. As the Joggler only has one USB port, trying to play Doom with the touchscreen would be an exercise in futility. So we're going to make our lives a little easier and use a mini USB hub to connect a keyboard and mouse, and we'll plug the memory stick in and it will happily boot from there. Next, we'll try some videos in VLC Media Player. As the Joggler could be used as an internet streaming device, it came with stereo speakers. Now these aren't going to fill a room, but they're enough for internet radio, alarms, notifications and VoIP calls. Note, there's no built-in webcam, so unless you added an external one, it was limited to making voice-only calls. Around the back, there's a DC input jack, an Ethernet port, and also a 3.5mm audio jack, so you could hook up some external speakers if you wanted to. But I can't imagine that this was a common use case. As long as you're not trying to play back 4K Ultra HD video, then the Joggler handles the playback of videos with ease. I've tried several different video container formats and they all seem to play back fine using VLC. Next, let's try some emulation. I've installed ZSNES and we're going to try some SNES emulation. I've got a generic SNES USB controller that I can plug into the free USB port on the hub and give it a try. Again, the performance is more than adequate and it handles this kind of emulation quite well, with the exception of the audio lagging and stuttering on occasion. I've tried some Sega Mega Drive, Game Boy and Game Boy Color emulation and these perform pretty well too. I wouldn't want to try anything more advanced though, as I honestly don't think it could handle it. One of the things I need to try is Sega Master System and Game Gear emulation, and I suspect that these will perform well on here too. One of the other bits of software I like to install on these old devices is Basilisk 2, a 68K Macintosh emulator, and that means I can jump back in to play some classic Mac games like SimCity 2000, and lose a few hours pretending I'm a competent city planner. Surprisingly, it actually runs pretty well considering the Joggler's fairly modest hardware. It hasn't been all plain sailing though. The other day, during the UK's latest attempt at becoming the Sahara Desert, the Joggler suddenly became painfully slow, locked up completely, and then refused to boot. After a bit of digging, I found that the CPU starts to throttle itself once it reaches around 70 or 80 degrees Celsius, so I'm blaming the heatwave on it rather than the hardware. Either that, or it just wanted the afternoon off. I've also enabled VNC and SSH, so I can remotely control the Joggler without having to poke the touchscreen every 5 minutes. That's especially useful because this device is incredibly glossy and seems to track fingerprints from 3 rooms away. Getting VNC running wasn't straightforward either. The machine is running Ubuntu 14.4, which is now so old that most setup guides have disappeared into the depths of the internet. So thank you to my friend Wolf, better known as Linux Tech Support, for helping me get both VNC and Basilisk 2 up and running. So then, after watching this video, should you immediately rush off to eBay and buy yourself a Joggler? No, absolutely not. With the original software, it's basically a very expensive photo frame, and none of the built-in apps work anymore. But with Linux installed, it's a lot more interesting, but it also is painfully slow. For example, the version of Chromium that it comes with takes 4 minutes to open. 4 minutes to open! Once it's finally up and running, it's actually perfectly usable, but you've probably made yourself a cup of tea, answered a few emails and questioned your life choices by then. That said, if you're patient, or perhaps slightly stubborn, then there are still some genuinely useful things that you can do with one. Plenty of people have used them as Home Assistant dashboards, and I could use one to display the feed from one of our security cameras over RTSP using VLC. Or maybe you'd hand it to the kids so they could play some old games without you worrying about them dropping your prized vintage hardware. It really depends on what you expect from it. I've genuinely enjoyed dusting the Joggler off and giving it another chance. And who knows, maybe this time it won't end up on eBay after all. Well, if you've made it this far into the video, thanks ever so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.